Have you ever stopped to think about where you come from? Not just your parents, but your personality, your fears, your quirks. We're always told it's a simple mix of genetics and how we were raised. But what if there's more to the story? Today we're diving into some pretty mind-bending research about kids who seem to remember lives they've never actually lived.
Okay, just picture this for a second. Your 3-year-old son, William, turns to you and says, that. It's unsettling, right? It's not just a weird thing for a kid to say, it's the specificity that gets you. And that one single sentence kicked off an investigation into a memory that logically just shouldn't exist.
And look, William's story isn't some isolated, freaky event. It's actually one of thousands, over 2,500 to be exact, all part of a huge, carefully documented collection of cases from all over the world. For nearly 50 years, researchers at the University of Virginia have been studying this stuff, trying to figure out what in the world is going on.
So let's get back to William. This wasn't just a one-time comment he made. No, he kept insisting, again and again, that he was his own grandfather on his mom's side, a man named John, who was a retired NYPD officer and had died 5 years before William was even conceived.
And this is where the story takes a truly chilling turn. See, William was born with a very rare and serious heart defect called pulmonary valve atresia. It affects the main artery that pumps blood from the heart to the lungs. His grandfather, John, he died because a bullet ripped through that exact same part of his body, his lung, his heart, and that main pulmonary artery. The physical link is just, wow. It's so specific it's hard to ignore. So how on earth do you even begin to study something like this from a scientific point of view? I mean, it sounds impossible. Well, it takes a special kind of researcher, someone with the guts to apply serious, strict methods to a topic most scientists wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
And that person was Dr. Ian Stevenson. Now, it's really important to get this. He wasn't some fringe theorist working out of his basement. This guy was a highly respected psychiatrist. He was the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia. His rock-solid academic credentials are what gave this research a legitimate home at a major university.
Stevenson's process was incredibly rigorous, almost painstakingly so. His #1 rule was to write down everything the child said before, even trying to see if it matched a deceased person. He'd then interview everyone involved, parents, siblings, relatives from both families, all separately, to make sure their stories lined up. He was his own biggest skeptic, always trying to find a normal explanation. Was it a fraud? Did the kid overhear something and forget? He even went as far as getting autopsy reports to see if, say, a birthmark matched an old wound. This was never about proving a belief. It was about cold, hard data collection.
And what's so fascinating is that after looking at thousands of these cases from totally different cultures all around the globe, Stevenson and his team started to notice something. Consistent, repeating patterns began to emerge. This wasn't just a random collection of strange stories. A clear phenomenon was starting to take shape. So one of the most powerful patterns they found, it was about how the previous life ended. Get this, a massive 70% of the children in these cases remember dying in a violent or sudden way, things like accidents, murders, or in combat. It kind of suggests that the sheer emotional force of a traumatic death might be what imprints these memories so deeply that they carry over.
And it's not just about the stories they tell. These memories actually show up in the kids' behaviors. A child who claims they drowned might have a crippling, otherwise unexplainable fear of water. Others might suddenly crave things they've never had, like tobacco or a specific type of alcohol that the previous person loved. You'll even see kids engaging in really specific play, acting out the job of the person they claim to have been. It's like the past life is bleeding into their present reality.
And then there's this, xenoglossy. It's a mouthful, I know. But what it means is the ability to speak a language you've never, ever been taught. Now, this is super rare, but in some of the most watertight cases, a child, often when they're upset or emotional, will suddenly start speaking words or phrases in a foreign language. It's as if the trauma from that past life just momentarily breaks through the surface and it brings its native language with it.
Okay, let's turn back the clock a bit and look at one of the very first and maybe most famous cases ever recorded. This one happened long before Dr. Stevenson even started his work, and it's the story that really put this whole phenomenon on the map.
We're in Delhi, India in the 1930s. A little girl named Shanti Devi starts telling her parents that they aren't her real parents. She insists her real home is in a town called Mathura, more than 100 miles away. She says her husband was a merchant there and that she had died just after giving birth to their son. And she just wouldn't let it go. Her details were constant, emotional, and incredibly specific. Her story actually became so famous that a formal committee of politicians and scholars was set up to investigate it. They took her to Mathura to put her claims to the test. The second they got there, she started directing the driver through the streets like she'd lived there her whole life. She pointed out family members from her past life in the crowd, including the man she claimed was her husband. And then she started sharing these intimate family secrets that absolutely no stranger could have possibly known. So let's just break down the evidence here, because it came in layers. 1. She navigated a strange town perfectly. 2. She recognized people on sight. 3. She knew private family secrets. And 4. She even used local slang words from Mathura that a girl from Delhi would have had no way of knowing. For the committee that investigated her, the sheer weight of all this evidence was so powerful they officially concluded her claims were true. So when you're faced with thousands of cases like Williams and like Shanti Devi's, all documented with this level of scientific care, you just have to step back and ask, what is going on here? What could possibly explain all of this? Of course, you have to consider the alternatives. Could it all be a hoax? I mean, maybe in 1 or 2 cases, but across thousands of them with no connection to each other? Highly unlikely. What about something called cryptomnesia, where the kid picked up the information somehow and just forgot they did? Well, that doesn't really work when the 2 families live hundreds of miles apart and have never met. And when they've done psychological testing, these kids turn out to be perfectly normal, not especially prone to fantasy or suggestion at all.
And that brings us right back to Dr. Stevenson. After all those decades of research, his conclusion was exactly what you'd expect from a careful scientist. He never once claimed he had proof. Instead, what he said was that for the absolute strongest cases, the ones where every other explanation was ruled out, reincarnation was simply the most logical and, quote, best explanation for the facts.
So we're left with this enormous question. We all accept that we are products of nature and nurture, our genes and our environment. But what if this research is pointing to a third pillar, a transfer of consciousness, of memory, personality, even physical trauma from one life to the next? What would that change about how we understand ourselves?